Okay, so Matthew Lloyd wants to know. Seth Rich, a Democratic staffer, was murdered on July 8th. He was beaten and shot in the back several times. D.C. police ruled it a robbery, but no valuables were taken, including his watch, wallet, credit cards, and phone. In light of Julian Assange's suggestion this morning that Seth was the WikiLeaks DNC source, and in light of other mysterious deaths surrounding people connected to or investigating Hillary, 6 in the last month, something like that, are we moving from crazy conspiracy theory to just plain theory? But another way, is there anything that this woman wouldn't do to get elected or to take vengeance on those who betray her? You know, I think that second to last line, the penultimate line, really nailed it, Matthew. When there was talk about Vince Foster, I said, okay, yeah, there's a lot about that was suspicious, but people just don't murder people in real life. It just doesn't happen. We keep thinking it happens because we see it in the movies all the time. But when you think about guys like Rush Limbaugh or people that have really stood up and just, physically and philosophically, publicly challenged the most powerful figures in the world, at least in this country, it just doesn't happen. It makes great copy, but it doesn't happen. So, Vince Foster, I thought, okay, well, look, and there's any number of things that might happen there, and people saying, the body was in a strange place and so on. However, there is now enough smoke there so that I'm starting to really pay attention. I think, as I said, you got that exactly right. Are we moving from crazy conspiracy theory to just plain theory? And I think we are. Even a year ago, even 6 months ago, I said, it doesn't seem very likely. But the body count continues. And the most, I think the most thing that's most concerning me in terms of the possibility of this is that, oh, come on, that couldn't happen. Well, the FBI couldn't investigate somebody for a year and a half, come back and list a half an hour of violations of federal law, and then say, but we're not going to ask for charges. I wouldn't believe that happened either. I don't know what's going on, but something's going on, and it's something very powerful and very highly placed. I have to start wondering, if that number 6 is really correct, and that they're all genuinely, violent deaths and so on. Then you can do a statistical analysis of the chance of that, and it starts to get up into the billions. That 6 people who were connected with Hillary Clinton's campaign in one way or another die a mysterious or violent death. That's rather remarkable. I don't know what they'd be willing to do. I certainly am beginning to think they'd be willing to do it. Look, like everybody else, I want to think that, the President of the United States is not a contract assassin, and neither is the First Lady. It just seems ridiculous. But one of the things, that just sort of bleed out over the course of decades or so is that it wasn't Bill Clinton kind of, copping a cheap feel and having somebody slap his wrist. Turns out the President of the United States was in fact a rapist, multiple rapist. I don't think there's any question about that. The women have testified. Some of them have testified that it was inappropriate sexual advances, and others have said it was just plain rape. So, if the President of the United States can be a rapist and get away with it, then you're starting to get into the kind of territory where this does not seem so far-fetched. We just finished a right angle on Hillary. It's my segment. And it was talking about, we did one just a few weeks ago about whether or not she's crazy, and this one was about whether or not she's gravely ill with all the coughing fits and the weird reactions to surprises and all the rest of that stuff. And especially her facial expressions. There's just an incredible, lack of humanity to that person. And people say that all the time, like, oh, she lacks humanity, as if she lacks sympathy. And that's true. She does lack sympathy, but she lacks everything else too. This is I think the reason that her facial expressions are so strange. Look, either she's got neurological damage, which is entirely possible. She took a big bang on the head. A lot of people said some of these things are indicative of behavior of somebody who's had either a concussion, post-concussion syndrome, or people who've had a stroke, some kind of brain damage. There's a lot of stuff that she does that has a medical vector. Or as I point out in the right angle, or this is a person who's either got Asperger's or is some level autistic and is incapable of doing actual emotions, and so she mimics it. And anybody who can see her doing these things knows that it's mimicking it. Again, I don't want to spoil the whole episode. Just read it to you verbatim. But there's a lot of rhetorical gimmicks that people use, and I think mostly they're cheap shots. I've never done it, and I've done hundreds of speaking events. I've never had to do this before because I never felt the need to, for reasons that I'll explain in a moment. But one of the things I started to see a while ago, and it was invented, I think, by Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton. I never remember. I certainly don't remember Ronald Reagan or George Bush Sr. doing this. I'm pretty sure it was invented by the Clintons. But in any event, it's a rhetorical. It's a move. It's like a football kind of a dodge, and it's very easy to do, and people don't understand what's actually happening. But here's what happens. You take somebody like Hillary Clinton, forget Hillary Clinton, you have a public speaker. They come up on stage, there's a large audience of people. They're walking to the mic, and they're relatively solemn and relatively serious. And they look over and they go, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" Now, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. So why do they do it? Well, they do it because it gives them a disarming moment. They get to smile. It makes them human connection to somebody, even though that person's not there. Hillary Clinton doesn't have any friends in the audience because Hillary Clinton doesn't have any friends. You watch her come out, and she comes out all the time. Always. She'll do this kind of pointing, "Oh, hi." Now, when Bill does it, because Bill does it all the time, Bill does it masterfully. Bill is kind of like a little low-key, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" But Hillary's like, and it's not human. It's what somebody who was studying to be a human might do, but it's not. It's so inauthentic that it's weird, and all of her weird facial expressions are just barking mad. That in the eyes, there's just something wrong. So the question is, is it neurological or is it just psychological? And I even speculated about the coughing might be a sign of, when people do awful things for a long time under great pressure, their body starts fighting back and they have no control over it. I know a lot of SS guys during World War II were, literally having to go out and murder children every single day, just pitch them into a pit or gas chamber or shoot them in the back of the head or something like that. And these men would have to start getting drunk, and then not only would they have the symptoms of being alcoholics, but they would start to develop, needless to say, ulcers, nightmares. They don't get to sleep. Their liver breaks down. Their nervous system breaks down. They suffer sometimes the shakes. Sometimes every now and then they get hysterical blindness. And it's because their subconscious mind understands that there's something terribly wrong with what they're doing, and it is hitting them on some very seriously deep level that even Nazism couldn't penetrate. Their heads are into the whole National Socialist role, but some level they understand that what they're doing is so unbelievably evil that their body rebels against it, no matter how much they justify it to themselves psychologically. It's possible that these coughing fits are a psychosomatic reaction. Possible that they're a psychosomatic reaction to her lying all the time. I mean, she's under tremendous pressure. She dodged the bullet with this email thing, but that email thing was hanging over her head for a long time. She knows that she's been damaged. Everybody's calling her a liar. Everybody knows she's a liar. The DNC thing came out and she's a liar, and she simply hasn't done a press conference in almost a year. This woman has got to be under unbelievable pressure, and I've never thought that she was particularly healthy in terms of her mental sanity. She's a woman who throws Bibles at Secret Service agents and kicks the back of the chair in the back of a limousine. She'll start kicking the chair behind the driver, and demands that the helicopter return to the Air Force, return to the White House because she left her sunglasses down there. This woman's just a crack. She's just a nut. And she doesn't have any of the, doesn't appear to have any of the psychic strength that you would need for this job. So I think it's entirely possible she's cracking up. Then you have to ask yourself, well, something's driving her. Something's causing her to be put into that position. What is it? Everybody says a lust for power, but what does that mean? You know, I mean, granted, it's a lust for power. It's obviously a lust for power, but certainly nobody who watches her thinks that she's doing this to help the poor or the disadvantaged. No one buys that story anymore. I know she doesn't like anybody. So she's doing it for something. She's doing it, I think, for... I personally have said this before, and I'm sticking to it, only because it's the most likely explanation. I can't come up with anything else. I think that she has always been bitter about being second place. I think she's always felt that it was because she was a woman. If she wasn't a woman, that she would be president. I think she felt that from the time she was that hippy-dippy chick with the bad glasses back in law school. Bill had a beard, and they're both smoking doobies, but not inhaling. And I think for that whole time, she's always felt that she's being kept back by being a woman, when in fact she's being kept back because she's not very smart and she's criminally dishonest. What does that leave for motivation? I mean, she has to have some kind of motivation. There has to be some kind of motivation. And the only motivation I can think of is a lifelong resentment of Bill, a lifelong desire to show him. And I think really on some level, I think she feels that she is owed this. Forget just being owed the presidency. I mean, many people have that attitude. Bob Dole and John McCain, you know, why are they the nominee? Well, it's their turn. Well, the reason they didn't have a turn earlier is because they're terrible candidates. But I think Hillary feels that she's been so humiliated for so long by Bill. Bill has humiliated her for so long and so brazenly that I think that she will not consider that score settled until she's president of the United States. Then she'll be the president. There'll be a second President Clinton, and she'll do better than him, and she'll finally have a chance to breathe a little bit of air and exhale a little bit, because she's finally gotten even with this philandering rapist that she's been married to for 40 years or something. And she's going to show him. And if somebody's got a better explanation for it, I'd be certainly happy to hear it, but I can't think of a reason other than that. She doesn't like people. She doesn't like politicking. She doesn't like giving speeches. You can tell. And when she's forced to sit out there with the common people, like have a hot dog someplace, you can see just the skin crawling off of her. She just wants to return to the reptile base down in the center of the earth, the hollow center of the earth, crawl back down there to reptilian center, and just stretch out on a warm rock and warm the blood up a little bit. She can just tell that she's a mess. And I find out that Carla and everybody else in the office is back there in the back room watching the show, and they're making comments here on the comment section, which is very nice, but they should be working. You know who you are. So anyway, I don't know what else to say about that. She's just a bloody mess. But I do agree with you that there's now enough smoke there that you got to start asking about fire, because there's the bodies are piling up. Scott Reeser tells us in real time, talking to our crew, which is in the back there, that they should all run out and be on camera. And frankly, I'd be 100% behind that. If the 2 or 3 of you that are watching the show back in the back room, that work here in the back room, and you know who you are, if you want to step out in a minute and wave and say hi, we'd love to have you. If not, then back to work. But if you do come out to wave and say hi, just be sure to clock out when you do, and clock back in when you get back in there. Okay, so